Welcome to our next episode of Keepin It 800, Local 800's podcast. Today we're going to be talking about our basic agreement negotiations with National Executive Director Chuck Parker. We're going to go through sort of process, and we'll also probably talk about what we were able to accomplish in our recent TA with the AMPTP. So let's just dive into it. So welcome, Chuck. Thank you for joining us today.
You're welcome.
So I'll just start with our top question. Compared to the last negotiations, what was different about this process here in 2024?
Well, the biggest difference in this process was the member participation in the preparation for it. That preparation was, at a minimum, almost a year and a half. There had been some preparation in the previous two, but nothing like this, and nothing even resembling the breadth of the overall membership participation across the 13 West Coast studio locals.
Yeah, I mean, having been involved in 2021 and 24 this time, and more involved this time, and actually being in the room, I would absolutely agree. I think not only was the member participation, but just the amount of preparation we all did as the 13 Hollywood locals really made a huge impact. Not only, I think, in our solidarity, but in the room when we showed up. I think I kind of got the impression it caught the MPTP a little flat-footed in the amount of work that kind of we presented to them moving forward. But of course, all being informed by the members through surveys and all the different ways we were able to get them involved and giving them the opportunity to let us know what we needed to negotiate over. So speaking of the room, we could parse this out a little bit between local negotiations and general negotiations, but who was in the room?
Well, in the first place, if you don't mind, I'd like to back up just a second. Sure. I would agree with your summation. However, in terms of comparing 24 with 21, that's kind of apples and oranges, because remember, when we were prepping for 21, we were coming out of the pandemic. And there were quite a few locals, particularly the smaller locals, that were quite frankly afraid to get in the room alone with the employer because of the amount of money the employer had expended in protections for COVID. They were afraid that the employer might want to claw back some things from them. So that was why we made an overall group decision to forego local negotiations and really bear down on across-the-board issues that had been gnawing at everyone for decades. And we were able to accomplish that in 2021. And we were able to accomplish increasing the residual component for streaming that goes in and has become a major funding mechanism for the plan at MPI. However, to get to your question, the overall local participation, it was through the roof. No one had ever seen it like this before. And it was all divided, split up into different categories. Each local was having their own private meetings, and then we were having group meetings with the locals, and the IA was having what they called table team meetings. It seemed like every single day for over a year there was something we were doing in a group preparing for these negotiations. And you are right, we caught them unawares. They were not aware that we were preparing to such a degree. And that's evidenced by the number of our proposals that we gave to them. Over 170.
Yeah, and what we have one page from them in response.
Exactly.
Exactly. So I think, I think touching on maybe some of those differences between 2021 and 24 too is that I wasn't in the room in 21, but when we were having conversations about it, there was a willingness there by the employer this time in 24 for them to listen versus in 21. I mean, how many extensions, how many, it was very intransigent on their part, and to really even listen to what we were bringing to the table.
It was palpable when they came in for the local negotiations. I was almost like, who are you people, and what have you done with the AMPTP? They actually listened. They were curious. They were interested. They could tell that many of these issues were really hurting us, and they wanted to honestly see what they could do, if there was anything they could do about it. And it was clear in their responses, in their counter proposals to us, that they were truly considering it. And I would also say that that holds true for the big room also.
Yeah. And it really was an exercise in listening, I think on both sides, but really for them in how they can meaningfully address our issues moving forward in this business.
I cannot speak highly enough about Mike Miller, Matt Loeb, and the staff of the IA, both the New York office and particularly the West Coast office, and how well they prepared us and how willing they were to hold the employer's feet to the fire.
Absolutely. We can jump around on some of these questions because we're kind of covering everything right now, which is great. And this is, what, speaking of the bargaining process, because where we're at right now, what comes up during this process that, a member may not really be privy to, and how we, not necessarily getting that details how we negotiate, but sort of the back and forth, and sort of a little bit more, giving a little bit of context to the negotiation process for.
Not quite sure how to address that. Bargaining is a give and take. It's always a give and take. And, the nomenclature is that the most successful negotiation is when both sides leave the table wanting something and feeling that they didn't get everything that they want. I have heard stories. I came on the scene about 8 years ago. 2018 was my first negotiation. I've heard stories about how draconian it was, how it was hard to get anything from them at all in the knots. But my experience from 2018, 2021, and 2024 is that we did really well in each three of those. I cannot emphasize enough how important the residual formulas that we created in 2018 for streaming, and this is the first time we had any residual participation with that, how rich that has been for the plan. That is what has financed the eligibility, health care eligibility extensions that took care of our members' health plans when they were not working during both the pandemic and the production shutdown. So these are very, very important, and they're there in perpetuity for us, and they will help continue to fund both the pension and health plans.
Yeah, and I think that's something that, members, at least in conversations I was having in the field, conversations with folks who paying attention, really did want us to address. I think they said, they recognize, especially the last handful of years, last couple of cycles, where we've sort of gone through from crisis to crisis to crisis, where we've been able to help our members through these crises, but also having the wherewithal to realize that we need to continue to fund these plans in order to keep helping our members through all of this.
Yeah, yes, and what's really important is to be able to afford to cover the drastic increase in medical inflation, because it's out of control, and we seem to have no handle on it. Nobody seems to have a handle on it.
Yeah. I think, and this speaks to sort of the theme of this bargaining, which was security. And that was made across the table in our opening statements, in Matt Loeb's opening statements, and throughout this whole process, going back to the first days, where we were really, again, explaining to the employer, hey, it's about providing our members security.
Absolutely right. And when Matt said that, he caught me by surprise. I thought, You didn't say anything about that during preparation.
No, same. I was like,
but it was brilliant.
Oh, and it really did help move the process along, because you can really take that to apply to so many different parts, the working conditions, the benefits, everything that we were negotiating over. Because I think it hit the point home that we were such a unique workforce, that we were a freelance workforce. We don't make widgets, we don't. But in order to get the best out of us, or get what the employer needs, out of a freelance workforce, there does have to be acknowledgement that our members need security in those times when they're not working.
Many businesses, the people who run the business, they know how to produce their product. That can't always be said about ours. And you're right, we don't make widgets. We never know what we're going to make. We never know what's going to be asked of us, and we have to produce it.
Yeah. And I think for our own members, Keepin It 800, our theme, we have a very unique skill set in being creative on demand. And that deserves a premium. Creativity is not, we can have a whole different conversation about that, but this ability that our members have to create on demand demands a security for when those times when they're not working, or when those times when they are working. And I think that was using that theme going forward, really, again, reiterating, helped move this process along, but really did address some things that we want to address going forward in perpetuity with bargaining as well. Like, we don't want to keep coming back crisis bargaining every 3 years under a deficit.
Every 3 years we come back and there's some hurdle. We got to come up with $200 million, $400 million, $1.2 billion, and then that gets pared back to $640 million, and we find a way to do it using our residual formula. So, the actors, writers, directors, producers, legally they share in authorship. They receive their checks directly. Our share in residuals is what funds the plan, and why shouldn't we be taken care of health-wise and pensions so that we can retire with dignity and have health care for the rest of our lives?
Absolutely. Moving into some different different aspects of what we were bargaining over. I mean, what are some of the new things we can highlight that we were able to achieve during this time?
We were able to. We got a healthy wage increase that dealt with cut into the inflation that we went through a couple years ago. We're back on track with that. We will actually surpass inflation according to the Department of Labor in the next 2 to 3 months, or near the end of this cycle at least that we've just negotiated for. So that's a good, that's a real get. Another real get was additional funding for the plan for residuals. There are all sorts of help me out here.
Sure. A new holiday. We had Juneteenth.
Yeah, Juneteenth. We got the ledger of gains is 7 pages of a column of gains an hour, and in their column it's 3 items.
Yeah, bereavement leave, which never existed. It just, the list can keep going, but I think another. We also put in new protections around emerging technologies like AI and how we will address that moving forward. That hasn't been in our contract before. And I think it is worth stating when we're talking about putting new things in the contract or even under new language, that's an achievement in and of itself. The employers do not like putting new language into contracts.
AI is here. And this is one of the last areas of business that AI has arrived in. It's been around for quite a while, and we were able to analyze it, study the gains of the other unions, being the writers and the actors and the directors, and we got some protections that they did not get. I will tell you that we started initially bargaining with the AMPTP about AI, and we expressed our concerns, what our worries were, and we might as well have been talking to a brick wall. They just would not budge. They wouldn't meet us in any of the conversations. But finally, somebody on their end had the idea to bring in executives for the studios that are head of the intellectual property departments. And once they did that, the dam broke. The conversations became much easier. They saw exactly what we were concerned about, and they addressed them with us, and they came and met us more than halfway in almost all instances. And we've come up with a pretty good agreement. You know, AI is not going to go away. We're not going to be able to say you can't use it, but we got very good protections for our members. Most importantly, it's going to be treated jurisdictionally. Yes. So that if someone is creating an illustration by way of prompts, it better be one of our members who's putting the prompts in.
Absolutely. Yeah, going back to the I think those first days, even in my own experience, I remember we got to that topic and we introduced our experts, and we were getting our expert advice from computer science majors from Carnegie Mellon University, my alma mater, by the way. And I was very proud of this. And then they introduced their experts, which were heads of intellectual property. And I was shaking my head, like, what are they thinking? And it wasn't until the conversation with those experts I was like, now I get it.
Yeah.
And it was a willingness to listen, not only on their side, but our side too, to say, okay, why are they bringing these experts? Oh, I see. That's their issue. That's their window of
They're
how
terrified.
Yeah.
They're terrified of it. They're terrified of copyrightability, and it was something that I learned that I did not know before, that if something is not created by a human being, you can't get a copyright for it. And this is key. Now, does that mean that the legal staff of Apple, Amazon, and Microsoft are not going to work overtime to change the laws about that? No, it doesn't mean that. They're going to, which should inspire many people to make sure they vote.
Yeah.
Because if the orange one gets in the office, these laws are going to change much sooner.
Absolutely. And I mean, that's after I take, I hope, a little vacation after all of this. That's where I'll put on the different hat as the Guild's political coordinator to really ensure that members understand what's at stake in their own lives. I mean, I hope people do, but that what we gained here can be taken away
with
the
vote.
vote.
The ballot box.
Yeah, so it's all part of the same process, and I think we shouldn't take for granted the gains that we got with our vote moving forward. Are there any other AI is a big one. I think there was also we got acknowledgement around subcontracting as well, which was a big issue for our members, and I think for a lot of the locals.
Well, the acknowledgement we got so far has not resonated yet with the members, because the language that we got in the agreement is not that much different than what we had before. But what is different is that the employers realize how much subcontracting has been hurting us, how much money it's cost our members, how many hours of employment our members have lost by it. And I don't believe that they really truly knew before. There have been a multitude of instances where I will go to labor relations with a complaint about something that's happening with a production company, and the response I will get is, they're doing what?
Yeah.
So I had 3 labor relations executives come out to me that evening after we had our presentation in the big room regarding subcontracting, and I spoke and told them about some instances that affected us, and they came out to me and they said, we truly had no idea. So I believe that it is recognized now how important communication about this, both ongoing, before and after, is very important.
Yeah, and I think you use these bargaining sessions every 3 years to raise the issue. and get acknowledgement of the issue, and hopefully you can change something in the contract around it. But I think even the acknowledgement now of the prolific nature that they're aware of helps us protect the work and helps us protect on that front.
Digital has been good for us in many ways, but it's also caused problems because there's less and less brick and mortar instances where people are conducting businesses, and it's getting harder to find what's happening out there because it's just happening in the privacy of people's bedrooms or their home offices or their garages, whatever. So more and more we are relying on input from the members to inform us what's going on. One other thing that you asked about improvements, and that is in streaming. There is a definite improvement in streaming. The new media side letter has been a bane of contention for a lot of members for a long time. It was overly complicated. Every different style of streaming had a reference to a different side letter. It was just horrific to track what was going on. And we were able this time to fold all of these terms and conditions bring it into the agreement, and particularly the wages. So there will be one large multi-chart where a person will be able to go in and track and see what they're earning, what their wages are, rather than having to go back and forth between side letters. It's a marvel that we were able to get that. And even more importantly now, we were able to do away with in most cases, with the years lagging back rollback rates. Since we got a 7% raise in the first season, in the first year, and we have rollbacks that are only 3% in most cases, that means they get a 4% increase. So it's a huge gain.
And I think we talked and the bargaining teams have talked. It's not a rollback. It's a discount, and part of the intention, as is explained, is to incentivize, because this contract over for all of the locals applies to Los Angeles and applies to California, so it is part of an incentive to say they want to keep work here along with the tax credits, that there's a 3% discount in that first year, but with the 7% increase, you're still at 4%. So it's a win.
Yeah.
All
There's
around.
no other way you can paint it.
Yeah. So I kind of hit on it, but in all of our side of the ledger where we have all these gains, APT really didn't come away with anything. The only thing I can really reference is a 3-minute increase to the length of programming that they had wanted. I mean, it doesn't mean they didn't ask for more.
It's slop.
Yeah.
If they go over a little bit, big whoop.
Yeah. But it is really a one-sided ledger in terms of what we were able to accomplish.
And like I was saying before, for the last 3 years, they all have been that way. Very one-sided. Fingers crossed it keeps going that way.
Yeah, let's hope so. And like I said, I think, and the more we can continue to put things into perpetuity, or continue that we have these guaranteed funding streams down, going forward, it does free up bargaining space and bargaining capital to do more working condition improvements and those types of things. Because I think, going back to that topic a little bit, I think that was becoming a concern on the members. We do need to guarantee that they can retire with dignity. We do need to guarantee they have access to health care. But when your working conditions, when your hours are getting abused, when things are happening on the work site that apply in that bucket, it's hard to bargain over when you're starting at a deficit of $500 million to ensure that retirement and that health plan.
Yeah. And then at the same time, we were dealing with issues where we had made great gains in 2021 about invasion of rest periods or invasion of meal breaks. And we found out that, to our chagrin, that even though we thought we had made great gains, they were starting to be eroded. So we were able to address them anew in a different direction and increase the penalties on invasion for rest periods and for meal penalties, so that there's real teeth to it.
Yeah, and also to increase overtime and the overtime provisions.
Oh yeah, overtime for on-call now when they're forced by the employer to work on Sundays on a seventh day, they're paid double time. Let's see, what else?
There's the 15 elapsed for those on production.
Triple time for that. Absolutely.
And double time after 12. And, I think some of the conversation that happens around these, especially with our on-call members, is like, well, how does this apply to me? How does this apply, these overtime provisions because I'm on call, like triple time and things like that. Like we're putting up guardrails to ensure that the schedule is not getting abused.
We're hoping that it doesn't apply to anybody. It's crazy.
Yeah, and
that's
they shouldn't be scheduling
15 hours.
15-hour days for anybody. And when the shoot schedule becomes manageable, then our work becomes manageable because we are given time to. It's really the intention of these is not necessarily to give somebody a payday, but is to help schedule the day so people aren't getting abused.
I mean, ultimately, what we want to see is an increase in production time, increase in prep time, because that's what's causing all of this. You can only figure stuff out with enough time to do it. And when they're cutting into prep time, when you have to design and build and dress and have ready to shoot permanent sets when you're in television, when you've only been given 4 weeks, I mean, that's what's going to happen. It's going to impinge on production time, and it's going to cause unnecessary overtime, and that's stupid money. Just stupid. One thing that we did get also is in travel days now, for travel only days, you get benefits.
Yeah, so
maximum of 8 hours, minimum of 4 hours. That was never done before.
Yeah. And then speaking of schedule, in terms of trying to trying to keep the schedule manageable locally, we were able to get into the contract a recognition of double up days and getting some relief for those double up days, either in the form of more help and more staffing, or there's a premium.
And we did that without having to give up a daily rate for an art director.
Absolutely. And
sick leave. Sick leave was problematic to access because it said previously that you had to work for 90 days. Previously, now we've cut that to 45 days, and that's manageable.
Yeah, and that applies to the if you're working for one employer, but in our freelance world, that can mean you could do a Disney show and then go to another Disney show, and those hours would still apply.
And that's based on California law. And in 21, we were able to get that when you're traveling under the distant hire provisions of the agreement. So a California resident is sent to Atlanta, that law travels with you.
Yeah.
So that was a get then, and we've solidified it now.
Yeah, and we've made it easier to access as well.
Yeah.
I mean, like we could keep going on and on. I mean, there's just there is a lot in here in terms.
Let's keep going on because we want members to know this, and we want this agreement to get ratified.
Absolutely.
And I'm telling you, it's 2 weeks from yesterday, the ratification process begins.
Yeah. Easier access to severance.
Absolutely.
Easier to qualify for severance pay. I mean, I think
guys, pay attention to severance. Read about it. I never knew about it. I only found out about it when I got this job, and I'm telling you, I left a BMW on the table. It's healthy. If you have any success on shows for multiple seasons, you're leaving money on the table.
Yeah, and it is. I think this is to say when we're talking about all this stuff. I mean, there really wasn't any stone left unturned in the preparation. I think that's what the preparation, that's how it paid off dividends. Every local was listened to. Every local was, we took their issues and we packaged them in a way that we could address every single thing in a meaningful way and get gains in nearly every topic.
It's true.
And
that's exactly what happened.
Yeah. And so, like, when we keep talking about, like, and this, that's really from that preparation that we've been doing for 18 plus months in getting ready for this.
The Local 800 AI task force did a very thorough work and preparation for this, and our fingerprint was on almost every single aspect of our proposals for AI. The only one that we didn't have our fingerprint on was autonomous vehicles, and that's the Teamsters.
Yeah. And I'm sure if we'd thought of it, we probably would have proposed something under that as well.
That's what we do.
Yeah.
We create things out of nothing.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of any more of the big ones. I think addressing
we could open up these big books.
Yeah, I mean, I remember toward the final days, I was looking at, as this got more and more full, these books here, and for our audio listeners, we're referencing these giant 3-inch binders of every document that we had that came across our table. It's a really good visual representation of the amount of work that's been put in over these last few months or year or more on this agreement.
We're hitting most of them.
Yeah, I would say, I think the only thing I was going to say is we're talking about these talking about the benefits.
Creation of a 401k for the members.
That's true.
The employer did not agree to it, but they did not disagree, and it's being referred to the plan, to MPI, and we who serve on the board of directors will look at this, and MPI will administer it.
And then to get a little more detail into the benefits contributions, it's also creating a new benefit stream for streaming, that covers all the different types of streaming, that covers ad-supported, subscription-based, and the now emerging FAST, which is free ad-supported, which they're claiming is the new thing, but it's really just cable on streaming. We're kind of coming full circle in the Ouroboros of content here. But we've now guaranteed that there will be a residual model for all of those different types of streaming moving forward in perpetuity.
Absolutely. And reuse is important, and they're always coming up with a different way to reuse the product, and we have to stay on top of it.
Yeah.
We can't predict, but we have to be able to react quickly, and we have so far.
And I think, again, by putting it in there and having that there, then we can go back and negotiate those if we need to adjust those rates and things like that. So it's, when I know I keep saying it, but getting things into the contract is in and of itself a win, because it means now you have something to keep negotiating over as we could every 3 years, that if it needs to be addressed, and it will need to be addressed. We know it will.
No participant shall incur a break in service for the plan year 2023, where very few people worked because of the production shutdown. There's all sorts of things here that we were able to get.
And that applies to the pension plan.
That is part of the pension.
Yeah. So, we've gone through this ledger gains. We've talked about, what we were able to achieve. What are the next steps? You and I know, but we can tell our folks here.
Member engagement cannot be overemphasized. As I mentioned earlier, it's not possible to know what all is going on out there. But AI is introducing a new level of member engagement. There will be no use of imagery that has originated by means of machine learning unless the employer knows. They have to be told. We have to be told at the same time. we don't want to create a culture where people are snitching on each other, but that's not what it's about.
Mm-mm.
We don't want a product to not be able to go out because it's founded on something where there's no copyrightability involved, because then that means we don't get contributions going into the plan.
Yep.
So it's we're feeding each other here, and we are dependent on each other. But it's going to be very important each step of the way. Members need to let us know what's going on with AI, and I will say it's to the point where we're going to have to set up, I don't want to call it a hotline, but I want to call it a dedicated email address. We will be having, once we had these conversations with the employer, now we're going to have to sit down and have conversations with each individual production entity, because they don't want to share their secrets with each other. We will have to sign non-disclosure agreements, but they're going to have to disclose with us what their plans are, what their hopes and wishes are, to see how we will fold in with that and how it's coordinated with the contract.
Yeah, I think to put a point on the engagement is, because I like what you said there, and I'm just sharpening for my own. It's just like, yeah, if we put in all that work and then it turns out that they can't own that work and it has to get shelved, we don't see any more money.
No,
it's your money too that is really being put on the table here in terms of AI and letting us know when it's being used.
They were very careful when it comes to grievances, when there's disagreements that have to be adjudicated, that there would be no injunctive relief, so that they can't be stopped from putting something out. And it's for that very reason that it's in our benefit. We can grieve and we can arbitrate. So, and we will.
Yeah. So next steps are voting. Ratification voting. So that that will begin on the 15th.
On the 14th.
14th.
On Sunday the 14th, the balloting will go out. But I want to back up a minute. Tomorrow is the day that all the locals, that's the deadline for getting their Excel spreadsheets of members' contact information into Honest Ballot. We'll be conducting the electronic balloting. Those reports actually go to the IA, then the IA forwards them to Honest Ballot. Starting near I think this coming Friday, we will be sending some texts out to remind the members that Honest Ballot is going to send out a test, and they will be testing the contact information that we provide to them. They want to make sure that you, the members, are getting that text, so they know that ultimately you'll get a ballot. And then they will do a final test for this on the 10th of July. On the 14th, the ballots will go out. That's a Sunday. And on Wednesday, the 17th, at 8:59 p.m. Pacific time, which is 1 minute to midnight on the East Coast, the polls will close. And then we will get the results of the ratification process the next day on the 18th of July.
So I think, what we're advising all members is watch your emails. Make sure you're getting emails from us. You're getting emails from Honest Ballot. If you are not, you can reach out to us here at the local. You can reach out to Andy Hagelshaw or myself. It's Andy H at adg.org, or Andrew, and that's mine, at adg.org as well. And and we can make sure you're getting the information. We'll make sure you're getting your ballot through Honest Ballot, and that you have the opportunity to vote. Also, look at, watch your correspondence, because we're sending out all this information Chuck and I just talked about, in forms of MOAs, in forms of different documents, so you all can take the time to read through it, try to understand it, and then you could reach out to me or any of the reps or anybody here, Chuck, Joel, myself. We'll be happy to talk you through, any questions you might have about how this might affect you moving forward, and make you, have you make an informed decision on your vote.
The members, you already received the memorandum of agreements for the 4 local agreements. We sent those out last week, excuse me. We do not have the memorandum of agreement for the general negotiations yet. We hope to get that in the next few days. You will receive it categorically before you're asked to vote on it.
Great. Yeah, so watch your emails. Things are going to be moving fairly quickly here in the next couple of weeks, but we're available to answer your questions. We're available to, address anything you might see in these agreements. Any other last minute notes? Anything we would?
Nothing that I can think of right now, except vote on this. And
great.
This is a unanimous recommendation by the local 800 bargaining committee to the local memorandums of agreement, and it was unanimous recommendation of the entire IA bargaining committee for ratification of this.
Yeah. Why are they so close? That's what
I almost got there. I almost got through this without flubbing it.
All right. Well, on that note, I think I want to thank you, Chuck, for your time. Taking the time to do this today and really speak to the members about all of this. I also want to remind folks, please subscribe to our YouTube channel and subscribe to Keepin It 800. If we'll keep putting out more of these podcasts via YouTube on different topics. Follow us on our social media, on our Instagram and on our Facebook, LinkedIn, and all of our channels. I'm Andrew Stumme, your Director of Field and Organizing and Political Coordinator, and apparently ADG podcast host extraordinaire. I want to thank everybody for your time and for Keepin It 800. Thank you, everybody.
See y'all.